Kings and Queen. You are welcome to our Free-Minded Academy session. And as it has become a culture, every Wednesday evening we gather and when we discuss about topic related to our situation as people and how best we can improve our living condition and then prepare a better future for those that will come after us. Today we are discussing a societal issue which is common in most African countries, and it has to do with congestion and high cost of living. Uh, Nowadays, it's common to see the exodus that most people are converging to a particular city where uh, many economic activities are concentrated, and therefore it causes a lot of difficulty for people to fit in, allocation, getting accommodation, um, moving around become very difficult because of the number of people gathered in one city. And then also, it happens that with time, we have realized that things keep inflation. There is inflation in most African countries. And then we need to discuss those issues, see the way forward, how is happening in our various cities, and then what we think we can do from the African perspective to address those issues. So briefly, I'm going to handle the mic over to King Fanelo. That is going to be our speaker. He's going to introduce the topic. And then I'm sure each and every one of us here, we can have a say when it comes to what we see around us, where we live. So right after his introduction, we'll be having the floor to discuss. So King Fanelo, over to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, King Coffee. Once again, welcome to all the kings and queens. It's good to see you, Queen Victoria, representing Namibia. And welcome to King Arnold, our senior. I recognize all of you kings and queens that are here. So this is a real challenge that we're going to be discussing. So I think, as per usual, after the discussion, we can all chip in and just, as per rule, open our mics and contribute to this discussion. But the heart of the matter is, if you go to any cities in Africa, major cities, I suppose if we look at Africa, the worst case scenario would have to be Lagos, Nigeria. So, I went there, sometime in 2014 for a friend's wedding. And, I thought, in South Africa, coming from South Africa, having experienced traffic in pretty much 3 of our cities. I mean, I have lived in Johannesburg, which is the highest congestion traffic. I mean, the city has about 6 million people just right there. The city of Joburg with Soweto, responsible for over 3 million of the city of Joburg traffic. And in Gauteng, you have the heavy population because everybody goes there for as a business or a capital, or business. Most head office of businesses were first in Gauteng. That's the commercial province of South Africa. And but all the cities is the same. I mean, you would go to Durban, and then you would go to Cape Town. You would find similar congestion because people have, over the years, have migrated from the various rural areas in our cities and moved from the rural villages and moved into the cities. So this is almost consistent across the continent. In Nigeria is just heavy because Lagos has about 20 million people in that one city. So in fact, I believe it is the heaviest congested city on the continent. But so how do we begin to, address this congestion? uh, because there are negative consequences that come with congestion. uh, you got high population, and there's lots of problem that comes with that. It's pollution. One is that pollution. And the mere fact that we say it's congested, it just means you're also going to waste a lot of time. It's not efficient to move through the city. And because there's also high density people, it creates a high risk for health, human health, even mental health. Because when you are exposed to city life, which is always rush, always noise, always smoke, and even the air you're breathing, usually then these things lead to a whole host of other problems, social problems, like lots of crime. A lot of crime happens in our major cities, and a lot of sicknesses because of pollution. And again, just mental health cases, suicide, teenage pregnancies. There's a whole host of problems that come because of cities. And in fact, it wastes a lot of potential, because then in the cities, everybody migrates to a city looking for greener pastures. But then they are surprised when they get there that the conditions of living will be appalling, because people are congested in small spaces. Then you have a lot of informal dwelling. They living in shacks, and bad infrastructure, bad utility, electricity, water, sewerage, blockages, and then a deteriorating infrastructure because of heavy traffic and heavy utilization that we see in the cities. And while in the villages you have clean air, clean water, and you have a vacant land basically. um, and the land is not as productive as everybody wants to imagine. That's why they leave and go to the city for better economic opportunities. So how did we arrive here? How did we arrive to these challenges, and how do we get out of it? Because the impact of this is, because of the volumes of people coming to the city, it also then means, we're gonna start then, causing a lot of inflation. Cost of living will rise, because as people come to cities, therefore prices goes up. The equation of supply and demand in the economics dictates that when you have everybody leave the villages where you could be producing food, you could be raising livestock, you could be producing things that you will ship into the city. When everybody leaves their land back home, uncultivated, non-productive, and move in the city, it means no one will be producing food in the city. Then everybody is a consumer, because that's what the cities do. They turn us into consumers. And suddenly, because we are all now depending on the local supermarket or corner shop or spaza shop to buy bread and buy milk and buy eggs, it means we can no longer now produce our own eggs, produce our own milk or our meat. Therefore, the prices will rise, because just by congestion, property prices in the cities, people as they migrate into urban areas demand spaces and proper housing. As constructions happen, prices are rising. Everybody who comes into the city, they just shoot the prices, because suddenly, the government must build more roads, and suddenly we must expand the power grid, electricity capacity. Suddenly we have to do something about the water system, because these things require town planning. There's such a thing as town planning. that is required before you actually have people in the city. And there are certain limitations and numbers in how well and how efficiently can you provide services. Refuse collection by default, because these things are often trailing behind the influx of people in cities. It creates town planning problems, because if you had ample of time, you would have always been doing analysis of the growth rate of your city people, and then your town planners would have always been planning for the space, more roads, wider roads, bigger pipes for water systems and sewage systems, water drainages, infrastructure, power grid. All of these things require that you have, you plan ahead, and at any given time it requires town planners in our municipalities to actually always plan in advance. In other words, you shouldn't have an infrastructure that is overwhelmed right now. You should always be having an infrastructure that is 10 years ahead, calculating condition. Because I just want to check. I thought I was lost. Am I back? Am I audible? If just one person confirms that I'm back online with my audio.
You are back.
Yeah, all right, great.
All right, great. So it requires now town planning, so that you plan almost many years in advance, because a lot of these major infrastructure you can't build overnight. Usually you have to budget, and usually you have to spend that budget for infrastructure over a number of years, and usually you have to be ahead of time with your planning. So how did we suddenly find ourselves with all of this? It's as though for Africa this thing caught us all off guard. It was like our revolution was sudden. It's like our independence was suddenly, because from the time then we achieved independence. Because remember that in Africa, it's true that all of this infrastructure was designed and planned only for the Europeans or the colonizers. Because all of them, whether it was a colony of Belgium, whether it was a colony of France, whether it was the British colony or Spanish or Portuguese, all of them, or all of these colonies, all the nice suburbs, cities were reserved for the minorities who are Europeans. And it doesn't matter, even in the Caribbeans, in Americas, in everywhere actually. It doesn't matter, even in Australia, New Zealand, the same thing happened across the globe. So the infrastructure that was built there was developed only for minority. So they put power grid, they put roads, water system, luxury, universities, schools, sports centers, only for the minorities. In fact, the whole Africa, it's like that. There is not a single state where, I think it's not only Africa, in fact, all former colonies, it doesn't matter where you go. Whether you go to the Caribbeans, whether you go to Cuba, whether you go to, it doesn't matter where you go. The infrastructure that exists was only and only built for Europeans and for their comfort living. When they were there for all the years of their colonial rule, they did not spend a cent or develop infrastructure for the natives. It doesn't matter where you go. It's the same situation. Even if you go to America, you will find that their policies disregarded development for the natives, African what it is. The sec, I received a call here into the phone. Just apologies, I had a call coming through my daughter. So now, what then happens? Because all the monies and the wealth of all the territories were geared by nature to only take care of Europe. So it was extraction, exploitation. Because of that, they were sure to spend the minimum so that they just have enough luxury and comfort living for Europeans across the continent of Africa and everywhere else where you have, the natives. Now, they made themselves comfortable, so they spend as little as possible on the territory. They focused effort in shipping the wealth, so the capital outflow was geared to go to Europe to build European economies. That's why Europe quickly industrialized and developed at the back of free labor and free resources that were flowing out of these colonies. And then those colonial masters live lavishly in suburbs, in nice parks, in nice schools, in nice universities, while the majority of the populations, which were then of African descent across the globe, when they found them there, they were all put into what you would call today concentration camps. It's not different to the camps that the Jews cried about in Germany. It's not different to the camps that Palestinian people are crying about today in Israel, Gaza Strip and West Bank. Now, exactly the same thing happened in South Africa. They call it Bantustan. So people were limited to a small space, heavily congested and concentrated of heavy density of people. They built townships for the natives, and they put them, packed them in small spaces and created the congestion by design, by segregational laws that created that, white Europeans were the masters. So there's going to be a segregation in terms of infrastructure. So when independence happened, most of all the liberation movements did not plan about town planning beyond liberation. They only focused on the struggle. I think that was maybe step one. So all we focused is to make the system fall. The colonialism, it must fall. And therefore, all the liberation movements were doing was to sabotage, was to make the jurisdiction ungovernable. And therefore they would actively, fight and resist this, unfair, unjust systems of government. And they would focus on, creating a lot of anger, a lot of destruction, burning things, sabotaging things, protests, dois, violence. So it created a lot of violence, anger, because of course, there'll come a time when people see the injustices that were happening. And now, what then happened with the liberation movement before independence, their focus forgot to plan ahead 50 years from when we take power. Now, what is our program of action? It's as though then power suddenly came, and when power suddenly came, and then all the colonizers just almost vacated and almost stopped, and what happened then, which was a big problem for everywhere, it was the fact that what happened then was that when they when there was a shift in independence, I think there was bitter relationships between liberation movements and colonizers, because then you would have expected that there would be some handover, a proper transitioning, where the outgoing regime would actually hand over all the assets of the states, all the plans and the blueprints and the plans that were already laid in motion for a couple of decades ahead. So what happened instead, almost everywhere, the same thing. This just shows how wicked sometimes these things happen. Instead of Europeans, handing power in a friendly manner, in a way where we can hand over and transfer things in proper order and planning and mapping up the future. What they did instead, they panic, they destroyed evidence, they shred a lot of land and property that belonged to the state, because now they did not want it to go into the cases in South Africa to the ANC government. There was a panic, everybody wanted to run, everybody wanted to loot and go, and everybody was on flight to Europe and relocation, moving monies, moving assets, hiding assets, transferring books, properties that belonged to the state, assets that belonged to the state, distributing them among other families and putting them in London and creating, safe havens to hide things, shifting head offices of industries. Now, this, of course, disrupted African scenario or any other former colonial places across the globe. And now what then would happen is that the next thing that happens is that then African governments are on their own. They have to now start looking at themselves and say, all right, now do we have engineers? Now, if you look at South Africa, of course, we did not have enough engineers because, we were prevented. We did not have universities that prepared us. We had a different and segregated education. Now, all of our people went through Bantu education. So, of course, we did not prepare all the architects, all the engineers, because those jobs were reserved for white Europeans. All of these industries, captains of industries, doctors in private hospitals, all of this was reserved for European. Even our parents were limited to be semi-skilled labor force, general workers. Now, of course, what do you do when you suddenly have power? You're taking over government, but you do not have you have not raised leaders, prepared leaders to run government efficiently and industry efficiently, because they didn't have the education, they didn't have the technical expertise, or because the liberation movements of the time did not factor the timeline of when are we taking power. By the time we take power, what kind of expertise would we need to operate efficiently? Now, because of that, we have a very big deficiency in infrastructure development in Africa. The wicked colonial masters just absconded and evacuated and left African governments to fail. And they left them to fail on purpose, because when they gave them political power, which they designed themselves, and the parliaments which they designed themselves, the constitutions which designed themselves, the laws and the judge and the systems and the specification of industry, tools, equipment that they designed themselves. They have contract and set up systems themselves. When they walk away, they only watched and wait for African leaders to fail. And then instead, they wanted to be relevant. So what they did then was to come back and offer our services at a premium price at 10 times now. Because suddenly they went with the narrative of privatization, and that agenda of privatization, it's what we call today neoliberal policies. And these neoliberal policies were a brainchild of the Chicago University a few elite there, you know, came up with, the British and the Americans came and wanted to test this concept, you know, of neoliberal policies, where they say it's about a free market. The free market must rule. Governments must not dictate terms, neither should the masses or the labor dictate terms. Let now the free markets dictate and rule by itself. Why were they doing that? They were doing that, of course, in all colonial former colonies, simply because they wanted to steal, come in and take. Because you see, the markets, if you say it's a free market, it means whoever can print money, can print currency, can print capital, then will dictate terms now. Because with neoliberal policies of governments, all you are saying, you don't want a president or a political party to rule. Neither do you want the labor, the masses, to rule. But what you want is capital. Now, who controls capital? Guess what? It's exactly still Europe, because when they evacuated all colonies, you can be rest assured that they set contracts and traps so that for years, all the governments will be enslaved by them. We call that neo-colonialism. When our government have the power in terms of political power, but in terms of economy, they run to Europe, they run to Britain, they run to America, they run to France, all the former colonial masters, because they depend on that technology, whether for military, whether for engineering power generation, whether for mining equipment, whether for airline industry, it's still Airbus, Boeing, it's still the jet fuel, whether for energy, you know, all the fuel, petrol, refineries, the agricultural sector, you know, the tractors that are still running our farms is John Deere. John Deere, who's John Deere? The combined harvesters, suddenly they shoot up prices. Suddenly Microsoft and softwares, tools, devices, phones, communication, satellites, fiber optics, all of this belongs to Europe. And it belongs to the people who own the capital, because now we've created neoliberal policies that dictate that the free markets are king. Now, of course, we've appointed our political leaders and our political heads, but they have no power because they can't print money. They can't print their own currencies. They don't have sovereignty over their bank, over their reserve bank. Those banks are instruments controlled in Europe. And in fact, we can even safely say they belong to the Rothschild system, banking empire. So that is the issue now. Now, if you now suddenly a government, you are needing money, capital to campaign, and the same capital says, oh, don't worry, we can put you to power. We can give you your campaigning money. We can give you the millions and the billions. You go buy your votes, you know, the stomach politics where you have to bribe people to vote for you. Give them food, give them t-shirts, you know, give them grants or something that is useless really to improve the economic situation. But bribe them so that they are happy to eat. Stomach politics, that's what happens across the globe, because then you see this is how the puppet masters control the masses through stomach politics. If they keep reducing the wage, because neoliberal policies does not want government to interfere with the rules about salaries, minimum wage, doesn't want to regulate labor. He wants the market to decide what they want to pay their people, when they want to pay them or not pay them. Therefore, what that created in Africa and all former colonies is poverty, because then neoliberal policies crowned a new king, which was not democratically elected. It was not our president. It was not the labor forces and the unions that we've elected. It was a new king, which is called money, capital. It's Mammon in spiritual terms, you know, the god of money. You know, religious people will know that everybody has a problem with Mammon, you know, because Christian says you can't serve two masters, God and money. And it is said in the Christian circles that the love of money is the root of all evil. Now that means what we've created is a system that worships money, that have prioritized money over truth, over life. That means we've created a scenario where money and economy, free markets are king, and life must suffer. We don't care about lives. In fact, to protect this, supremacy of this king called money and capital, to always dominate the world, as America has enjoyed for a long time since after Second World War. To protect their supremacy, they are prepared to use anything necessary. And that is why they have used that same capital to create over 700 military bases globally, to build nuclear power and bombs, to put so much fleet. Right now, you've got a lot of their ship just next to Taiwan there in China. You know how far that is from America. But they are funding and paying the biggest military budget for the reason that they want to threaten everyone. This is how we rule. This is neoliberal policies. They want to rule by force. So that means any government that wants to intervene and protect her people, we're gonna call them a dictator. And the same capital is used to buy media and create propaganda. This is how all our leaders who wanted to rise against the system. Kwame Nkrumah was the first victim of CIA and media and manipulation. Gaddafi was another. Patrice Lumumba was another. All of them were victims of the same propaganda, same manipulation by this beast that wants to rule and be worshipped by everybody. So everyone must bow to this beast. Now that we have this beast that we've crowned, called global capital, so this is in a sense, the reason why this beast keeps influencing and manipulating exchanges, currency fluctuations, prices of things. They go to war, but they want to, raise the financing of the war from all of us. Because when Russia and Ukraine go to war, suddenly we all now must increase prices of fuel, prices of this, prices. Why are we doing it? Is because now that white capital wants to be moved into a military mode to finance war. So they're financing war with Russia, with Ukraine against Russia. They are financing war with Israel against the Palestinian people. That war is financed by all of us's contribution to that thing called inflation, interest rates. They call it the bankers, speculative markets. They are the ones who are manipulating numbers, currencies, rand versus dollar. What's the price of gold now? What's the price of oil now? And because now we are worshiping this beast called money, what they even do, which is wicked, when the price of oil drops and they go to an extent of shutting down the production to change, because we don't like that. You see, this thing is about money now. It's not about life. It's not about who suffers. They don't care about that. Now, what has been the impact of allowing these neoliberal policies to rule? We've seen it. This is then the congestion. This is the cost of living that is felt by labor and by the masses on the ground. And the impact of letting these free markets rule the globe unchecked. We have seen the various crashes. In fact, history has showed the crash and crash and crash. From America, they had the Big Depression, 1929. Then we had the other, global crash, 2008. Now we are having, Britain is under crash, by the way. The economy is crashing. Now America is crashing. It's a dead bubble now. They sitting with 35 trillion US dollars of debt because they have a very big bill. They have to maintain all of these military. They have to bully the world. But now they don't have the assets to print that money. So they've been printing and printing and printing and printing and printing and printing. That's what raises too much money in circulation. They printed it again with COVID-19. COVID-19 was a global heist. They release a virus in the air that they designed, and they have an IP in it. They've researched it with those military research, biowarfare. Then they release it through China, and it affects the whole world, and it holds the whole world in ransom. Then they come to offer solution. Now all governments must open loans to the same capital so that they can now do tests all their citizens and buy vaccines for their citizens. We've set up, even here, we've set up a bottling facility for a vaccine, Johnson & Johnson, for worth over 20 billion. Now, who's going to pay that right now? We've built it in East London, in PE. So who's going to now finance this thing? Because apparently now it's no longer obligation that we are vaccinated. So now what's going to happen to that investment? Now we have to now find a way of paying this bill, because the governments are forever in debt to pay all of that capital that they did not plan for, they did not budget for. So what happens? So such monies are spent unplanned, and then we have to pay debts for many years to come, and therefore it reduces the amount of money available for our local governments to build infrastructure and invest in things that we can do, to sustain and develop our own infrastructure so that we build more roads, more things. So there is a big problem, and it requires now all of us to participate in the solution of this problem, because it's a beast, and we need to now respond. So what is the response? What are the solutions? So immediately, the first solutions that we have as Lever is that we have to understand the rules of the game, supply and demand. So we understand supply and demand. So that means if you want the prices of egg to fall, it is easy. You need to overproduce eggs. So what that means is that as families, now there's never been a time where we need solidarity. We need it now. So now we need to go back, organize ourselves as families, so that we are able to maneuver out of this storm right now. We can. If you are a family of 10, don't all live in a city. Send someone home so that they start preparing the ground, so that they start building fences and restore properties there, so that they start planting and producing. You don't need tractors to first start with a subsistence production. Nobody needs tractors. You need your hands and your labor. You need hands. You need the big, and the nekeja. I don't know what you call that in other languages, but our ancestors have long cultivated the ground using cattle and using donkeys and horses, but we've also used our muscle, just to prepare enough square meters of gardening so that every family can start producing all kinds of vegetables, and have start with a small livestock, raise your own chickens, turkeys, goats, sheep, and then build up to cattle, and start milking, having your own milk, and back to that basic. And then again, we need to divorce ourselves from Western technologies, because the pharmaceutical industries and the agricultural industry has been polluted by GMO, which means if you go back home, you now need to buy fertilizer and you need to buy the seed. So we need to really reset ourselves from that. And I think the best way is to use our numbers. If we are a big family, let's collaborate and achieve solidarity. Let's not deploy all of us in the cities. Let us send a delegation that will go back to the homestead to hold the fort, while those that are in the city will then ship money and support the processes back home. But if we trigger production, even in the townships, even in the backyard gardening, in all of these small enclosures. If you start there, with the small operation garden vegetables, there are a lot of technologies available, but rely on organic. We call it organic farming. Study those kind of organic farming technologies or methods. Study, they say farming in God's way. There's other things, others they call it permaculture, Eswatini, permaculture. Study and research those methodologies. But you see, our parents knew how to use a whole ecosystem of having livestock producing manure, and then prepare the ground using a cycle with your chicken manure and all of these other animals, small animals. Maybe you have pigs, maybe you have small livestock. You use that for manure, and then you create and you plant grain so that you also feed the animals. And now we need to be self-sufficient. I think that's the word, self-sufficient. We need to go back to self-sufficiency, because there was a time every family in Africa was producing enough food for itself, building its own shelters and setting up its own processes, and teaching your own children at home, and organizing your own medicine, your own herbs, natural herbs for planting and healing. That knowledge, that art, the native seed, we need now to go back to places where we still have native seeds. Go to Eswatini, in certain places they still have this seed. So let's cross pollinate and share. Some places like Malawi, Zimbabwe, and they still have these native seeds. So the beauty about this illum seed or native seed is that if I give you a few, I just give you one cob of maize. Actually, you can take that one cob and turn it into a field for generations, because with the native seed, you always produce a harvest, and then afterwards you can take a portion of your best there and keep it for the next season's harvest. Now, you never had to buy seed, and therefore you could be generous and start producing seed for each other, giving each other I've got pumpkin seeds, I've got peanuts, I've got beans. Everybody plant, because when you plant, there will be abundance. When there's abundance, money falls. We don't need money, we need food. Because what happens is, when we are in the city, why are you working in the city, by the way? What is it that you're working for in the city? Or what do you do with the money that you earn? Guess what you do with the money you earn in the city? You pay shelter and accommodation. Then you pay transport to go to work. Then you buy food. The money is finished. So actually, you're working for food. But if you go back to the village, guess what? The land was free anyway. And guess what? You used to build your own house there with your own labor, based on your neighbors and your people. So it was fairly much cheap to build there, And then two, you can produce your own food, and then you have your ample of time to do other stuff, teach kids, do recreation, and do other stuff. But with abundance that you create, then we can trade. Because then, if in a community we're creating so much abundance, now we can, collect all of this from all the various households and ship it for exports. So we create enough for our own food and sustainability, and then we organize abundance for exports. Now, of course, you have to export, because you see, countries like Somalia, they are in a desert. In fact, most countries there are in a desert. Others are in ice for most of the time in the north, in the global north. So there is no way they can produce their own food there. So that means they will always depend on us in a very nice, conducive environment in next to the equator, where it's warm and lush and there's water, enough water for producing crops. So we will always, as Africa, produce abundance. So if you're producing abundance, then we just have to agro-process these things to preserve them, dry them, ship them, or do stuff that preserve them and ship them for income. Then in that way, we are net importers. If we are net importers, it means we are rich. because we are only earning money, but we are not spending money outside. That is the game. So that means we now use our labor, our hands, to actually work the land, whether we mine it, whether we plant over it, whether we're producing crops over it. But let's go for abundance. Let all hands on deck do that. Be producers. Let everybody produce. Let each family, at least if you're a family of 10, select a few of you to be dedicated for this purpose, because maybe then the rest, wants to be doctors, others wants to be engineers. But those who want to be doctors and support the family back in the village, now that will then create eco villages, because we also want to develop infrastructure in the villages so that people go back to a cleaner air, fresh air, not polluted, congested places, clean water. We can buy now and bring in, pump your own water from the ground. And then we have a lot of purifying technologies for water filtration. Actually, we can create our own systems as communities. Self-sufficient means you can also build your own power supply, because we have solar technologies now. We've got wind technologies for power harnessing. We've got biogas, where you can actually recycle some of your own human manure into biogas, or animal manure, cattle into biogas, and produce your own gas to cook or to heat water. Or you can use solar. You can use one of those geysers that warm water by the sun. There's other technologies that are available when you drill down to the earth and reach the hot part, and then put waters down there, pipes, and return it, so that you use the earth heat to heat the water, and have a return system back to the surface. Then you have liquor boiling water for many things, because you can use steam to drive turbines to generate power. You can use dams and lakes. So self-sufficiency is the solution. As long as everybody in the city goes there and is actually wasting a lot of time and sitting on the road waiting for someone to employ them, that day is lost. Now you could have produced more things. That means now poverty is because we're not productive. So if you go again in the city, you see now there are 10 ladies selling apples or next to taxi rank, or on the road next to a mall. Now, where is the efficiency in that? Why is everybody selling bananas here around 10 kilometer, or hundreds of you here on the street selling the same thing? Of course, you're working hard, but you're making small margins. How about if you then say, look, let's consolidate. Let everybody who's selling on this same spot in the same street, let's now actually occupy a cooperative shop. Let's have our fresh produce market. Set it up nicely, proper shelters, proper accommodation, and then so we can attract even a better clientele. And then the rest of you, because now you have your fruit and veg set up here, only 5 of you can operate it. The rest of you go back home and produce the food that you're going to put on the shelves there, on that fresh produce. The rest of you go produce the meat and raise the cattle. Then we don't have to be in the cities, all of us. And again, we need to be very much conscious that we are the ones who feed this beast. Because of the love of money, we are prepared to lie, to kill each other, to deceive each other, even in marketing, in sales. One of the challenges we sit with is people who lie, make empty promises, and falsify what you're selling. You're selling nothing, but you are falsifying it because you want money. We're always victims of people lying because they want money. One deceives. I mean, even now on this social media, on these platforms, every day there's someone who's calling me lying. Our own Africans, by the way, they're saying, hey, we are in this group, there's going to be a code coming in there. All they want to do is deceive a person so that they hijack their WhatsApp and then go asking for money from everybody. Why do we have to do that? We do not have to do crime for money to earn a living. We can literally go back home, produce potatoes, and produce abundance of those potatoes, because out of the potato you can make so many things. You can freeze them and create French fries and ship them and package them. You can, I mean, there's so much you can do. You can turn them into powder and starch, and you package it, you ship it. You can make so much with potatoes. Now, you can therefore export. You can do the same thing with any crop, any livestock. You can do that. Then we earn money from exports. All currencies come in. But beside that, there is a bigger role that our government needs to play. They need to get rid of these neoliberal policies. We need to go back and recognize that even Europe itself, even Chinese economies, they were built by government protecting their territory. Right now, USA is protecting US against Chinese electric vehicles. I mean, they are busy hiring the price, putting charges so that Chinese can penetrate the US market. I mean, it costs cheap for a Chinese electric car. It's cheap and it's good. But US is angry now because Chinese is ahead of the game with the competition. And now they are busy sending warship there to threaten China, with Taiwan. Because they want to be bullied. They want to be the ones owning all the markets. So that means the way we deal with this beast, we close our markets. We do not allow products that comes from Europe. Simple as that. And Europe is the one who needs us. They need our coffee, they need our cocoa, they need our fruits, they need our beef, because most of the time they are sitting in ice. They can't even produce that stuff. Besides, they don't even have the land. I mean, look at all these small states in Europe. They are not sustainable by themselves. So they often have to bully Africa as a market so that they build cars and then shovel them down to us. Or, do some stuff with genetic modified chickens and shove them down to us. If we refuse them, then they send foot and mouth diseases and birds flu. Where is these things coming from? Isn't it manipulation, warfare of economy? So I think we need now to go back to a place where we really protect ourselves. Solidarity, it starts there. It means let's work for ourselves. Let's manufacture and produce. Let's now go back to our textiles. Let's go into this mode of getting big, kickstarting our textiles, manufacturing, making our own clothes. And let's just ignore Europe, what they do. And let's not serve their companies. Let's serve our own companies. Let's build our companies. Now let's force our government, because solidarity will allow us to force government to divorce this neoliberal policy and tell our government we want to own our own reserve bank, we want to own our own single currency, and we want to print our own money against our own sovereignty and create sovereign fund. You know how easy it is to create your own sovereign fund. And then because you look at the continent of Africa and you say Africa is worth right now, I'm just making an example, $1 trillion US dollars. It's infinite. The correct answer for what is the valuation of Africa is infinite. That's the correct. The wealth of Africa is limitless. That's the real truth. So, but for the sake of economics, let's give it a value. So I go as a government, I declare now that, hey, look, I'm in charge, I'm sovereign here. So I declare my own reserve bank, my own currency. I announce it. It's within my right to do it. Therefore, my land is worth 1 trillion. So therefore, Mr. Finance Minister, make available 1 trillion. Just like that. That's it. It's a printing press. That's all you do. And when you're printing press, this is now why you're going to manage inflation. This is how you beat inflation. You see, if you print money against your own sovereign debt, that money that you're going to print, that trillion, it's actually just IOU notes. It's debt. But that debt is backed by your land. In other words, you do have a tangible asset called the land of Africa and everything that is in that land, including its human resource and all of what it has. So it's worth 1 trillion. So if I then take that 1 trillion and use it to produce products and services that will be good for my citizens, now That is how you beat inflation. Because the problem with our government, if you now take the debt and consume it for things that are useless, that does not produce, I mean, you can't take debt for consumption. I mean, that's irresponsible. You can't take debt to buy bigger cars, bigger jets, bigger military. By the way, military spending on debt, it's just a wrong thing, because there's no return on investment on the military. You know, the amount of money US government spend on military, there is no return on investment on it. Literally no return on investment. The only time military will be a profitable business is when there are wars. Now, because you can't, how are you going to justify putting millions in military war tech that you're never going to test? You see, today they go ahead and start war with Russia, start war with because the military complex is very happy. They are testing their drone technology, they're testing their new latest weapons. Everybody's happy testing systems. Hey, they are making money right now. Yeah, you go to the stock market. Hey, the share prices of these military complex industries, hey, they are smiling right now. They are smiling, same as the pharmaceuticals were smiling when it was COVID-19, creating this hype and these things. So this is the reality. So the only way we deal with this thing is that we spend on production, not things that they have no return on investment. So if we build infrastructure like power stations that can generate and build other economies, build our transport grid, our own plane, jets and railways, our own stuff that will in turn high yield and send our people into education, develop our engineers, our doctors, our own research capabilities, our labs. If we do that, then we create the self-sufficiency that we want and prosperity, and then we get out of this system that is manipulated in terms of pricing. So I'm going to pause there for the sake of time and hand the mic back to King Coffee for inputs and comments and thoughts on this discussion. But otherwise, that's where I yield. King Coffee, back to you.
All right. Thank you so much, King Fanelo, for your presentation. I think you have been so inspired that you keep going on and on and on. And you really enjoy the topic. For those that just joined us, you're welcome. Royalties, kings and queens. Today's topic has to do with a societal problem in Africa in general. The topic is congestion and high cost of living in Africa. And King Fanelo has made a nice presentation. From what he has said, he has said a lot actually. He talked about the cause of it, which has been to be, according to him, sudden power handed over to Africans, and then this without proper long-term projection and planning. So Africans happen to take power, and they didn't plan for years to come, whilst actually our cities were built by colonizers for their interests. So then he talks about the manifestation of this problem, how we see congestion and then traffic in Nigeria, in South Africa and other parts of Africa. And then he talked about the solutions as well. He emphasized on self-sufficiency, more production. So basically, for those who just joined us, that's a brief for before I open the floor for more contribution. So in case you have any contribution, kindly unmute your microphone. I'm gonna give you the floor, then you can come in with your contribution. Thank you so much. It seems like there is no microphone open. I guess our royalties are not ready for contribution. So for now, maybe we can continue from here. I can literally come in with my contribution. I think it is high time Africans restructure Africa. For me, I personally think that the issues happening in Africa regarding people moving, from a particular geographical location has to do with concentration of power and most major economical activities at a particular point. So if we decentralize some of these things and create more industries, and then industries that basically has to do with the resources of every region or state or what do you call it, department in the country, obviously there are going to be less movements towards one particular point because people have interest in going into more diverse industries. So for me, I think it is essential that we restructure Africa, we develop, Africa, we plan it our way in terms of uh, the resources available to us and then what we want to achieve. So that is my little contribution here. And then if there is no other contribution, I think we can make it quick because we have already eaten a lot into the time. I'm going to give the microphone back to Kim Fanelo, and then he can give us a roundup. Then we can close it. We can call it a day.
Yeah, I would like to speak.
Okay, that would be nice. Can Apifo, right?
Yeah, good evening,
Good evening. Go ahead.
real men and women. I'm speaking from Ghana. I am Api Banga. Very soon, Ghana will be heading to a general election, and I've gone around many towns and many villages, and I've heard people saying, "I voted the last many elections and I haven't seen anything. So I am not going to vote." I have heard this from so many people, men and women, and even the youth. Some are even saying it. They will not vote. I think it is our key responsibility to also educate them on why they should go out and vote. If we say we are not voting, that means those who are ruling and we are complaining will continue to rule. So let them know that it is important for them to vote to select the leaders that they want. Leaders that would bring positive change to our society. Leaders that will listen to us and implement what they say, not those who would continue to deceive and exploit our people. This is something small I have to add in this our all important meeting. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kin Apifo Abanga. It is well noted. It is essential that as people we take part in the affairs of the city, being able to select who we want to lead us is very essential. And then, in fact, it's so much related to what we are discussing today. If we have leaders that really represent us and then see through our daily life living condition, obviously they will make decision and proper planning for our state. So thank you so much for your contribution. Any other contribution from here? All right. It seems like Fanelo has handled or has taken it all. Kin Fanelo, I'm gonna hand the microphone back to you. Let me acknowledge the presence of our national chairman, the ACUP national chairman in Ghana, Ken. Greetings to you. Nice to have you here. Do you have anything for us before Kin Fanelo give us a conclusion? All right. Let's make good use of the time. Kin Fanelo, over to you. Please have the microphone, give us a conclusion, and let's call it a day.
Yeah, peace and blessing to all of you. I just like to say that we must continue to organize ourselves. It's organizing, just like my fellow Ghanaian Avinga said not long ago. There is apathy. There is the struggling to identify the youth with the growing instability in the political arena, which is killing our children. And therefore, there is a need for us to continue to organize, to translate what we say to reality. like organizing ourselves politically, business-wise, mindset change, organization, and taking us to the next level so that the Gen Z and the millennials can follow us. But if we continue to be in corrupt environment and indisciplined environment, lack of ethics, lack of morals, lack of leadership, then we are leading the Gen Z and the millennials into the gauntlet where they would have no other option but to turn around and break our necks. So we need to continue to organize, and the youth should be on the forefront. That's what I have to say for you. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you so much, Chairman, for your contribution. It's well noted. We need to organize ourselves more, get the youth involved in the affairs of our continent. Thank you so much. King Fanelo, I'm handing over the microphone to you. Please give us a brief conclusion, then
All
we
right.
can call it a day.
Yes. All right. Thank you so much, King. Actually, let me just also acknowledge, if you are new, you are joining us for the first time, you can just open your mic and greet us and let us know where you are. We acknowledge you. This is a community. ACUP is a Pan-African movement that sits globally. So we have kings and queens all over the world. And we definitely love to hear your voices. We love your inputs, your participations. We value your inputs, in fact. So we always want to hear what you have. So you must not be shy. It's our culture that all of us can contribute, because whatever little you think you have will benefit us when we go ahead. I see King J.K. Innocent open the mic. You wanna jump in, King? Go for it, King.
Yes, I'm speaking from Ghana. I'm called Kubapiri Jonas in the northern part of Ghana. This is a very nice initiative. We pray and keep that and hope that it should be there forever.
Thank you so much, King. Even that is great. I think just a holla greeting, even if you don't have any comment, it encourages us. So we appreciate that. So yes, thank you so much. I think anyone else would like to jump in just to say hi where you are. So we shout and greet back. You are welcome to do so. Go for it, King Emmanuel. King HK Emmanuel, you can go for it. You just have to unmute. Okay, I saw you unmuted and then you close the mic. Okay. All right. I think thank you so much for. Okay, go for it.
Yeah, okay. Okay, I'm Emmanuel. We are calling from Liberia, good to be in the midst of the good queens and king of Africa. I say so, and I really want to appreciate all the good and the heroes and heroines of Africa who are pushing for the ideology of one African state. It's good that we all stand together and do this for the better. Thank you.
Thank you so much, King Emmanuel. In fact, what I will ask, we are doing an initiative that will help us coordinate the effort and the change. In fact, it's very critical what you've just raised, even King Ken, with is that the JK Innocent from Ghana, or is it P4? King alluded to it. So we have a real challenge in terms of our youth that is disengaged politically. And if there's anything we need to do right in this generation, is that we can't allow that to happen, because we've seen it in South Africa. We hosted our election on the 29th of May, and then the voter turnout, the people who made a decision on our national election were just 25% of the 62 million people. Now, that is not majority. So what happens? It's because people are tired of political parties. They are tired of failures. They just have seen it do good. Oh, everybody's a puppet. Actually, everybody goes exactly. It's this issue we're talking about. The problem is the neoliberal policy of government. That policy is shoved down by United Nations and by the pushed down by G7. America is the and Britain's the brainchild of dictating these terms into all jurisdictions. They will go even to war and arrange coups to make it happen. Anybody who doesn't want to dance by the tunes of neoliberal policies, they are victimized as dictators. That's why they hate China and Russia. They call them communist states or socialist states. But the West is always in opposition to actually crowning a king, which is a human being, or a government who is a head of state, or the masses, the labor, to actually participate in making rules and decisions. They rather want to worship money. That's the neoliberal policies. So the only way we can deal with that and overthrow it, if we are going to do it by the ballot, then we need to mobilize the masses. Because if we don't mobilize the masses, so what has happened in South Africa, you find that our parliament is filled with the minorities. The minorities have the biggest population for the size of the constituency that they have. I mean, Europeans in South Africa, of the 62 million people, they are only 7%. But they are second biggest political party by votes. Therefore, they hold more seats than even MK or EFF, or even parties that have been there like Ingata Freedom Party, UDM, PAC, all of those. How is this possible that you have a minority people who are sitting there, second highest in our parliament? That just tells you apathy, because while our people, revolted against participating in election because they were not happy with the politicians, once again, thanks to media and propaganda and narrative that ANC has failed in the last 3 decades, that is what disheartened our people. It's thanks to propaganda and media that highlights corruption. And because of all of those messages, then they want to come and be the solution. Because if government infrastructure and services are not conducive for their people, they create private institutions. That's why now the cost of living is high, because now there's private schools, there's private security force, there's private people, private this, private this. So everything that is going private, it doesn't mean it's going to you and I. It's going to European. And therefore, once again, they will make us slaves, because the relationship between these policies is high unemployment and a very wide gap between the rich and the poor in any nation. That's the cause of neoliberal policies. That's what they do, because they are designed for exploitation, to rip off, so that someone profits at all costs. Otherwise, it's greed. It's a system set up for greed. So that the owners of capital walk away with all the money and give crumbs to the natives and the people who own the land and who own the labor. Now, this is really, really terrible. It's what we need to change. So if we don't move, then the whole continent will be taken over by Europeans and European capital. But if we work and recognize the time and say we need to organize ourselves. This is what our chairman is saying from Ghana. Organize ourselves and really structure our families, speak and engage to our young people, tell them that they are kings and queens. They must take charge of their own economy, of their own political decisions, of their own social order. And we need fathers, we need mothers to groom the next generation, not to be absent not to abscond to that role. Because if fathers and mothers abscond, then Hollywood, the TV and TikToks, which once again is instrument of the West, propaganda and media, all those movies are sending in messages. Now all the kids, as soon as they graduate, they all want to go work in Europe because they've been seeing it so much in Hollywood. How America present itself, American dream, Silicon Valley. But actually, it's a deception, because you are leaving your wealth behind, vacant, and then you are letting Chinese come in the space. You're letting Europeans come in the space. That means you will forever not have a homeland, because while you are busy building someone's economy, who's building yours at home? While you are busy in Europe, who is taking care of the farm and the village? So that is the dilemma that Africa needs to awake itself to this hour and say, let's change all of that. Now you can assist us. Between 2024 and 2025, we are wanting to coordinate champions in all jurisdictions. We want coverage of 195 jurisdictions, so that we can have key champions that will help spread the message. What we want is solidarity within the next 2 years. So we want to actually consolidate. You see, we want a champion in South Africa to pull all of the political parties that have been divided by this capital, pull ANC, pull EFF, pull Umkhonto, Inkatha Freedom Party, excuse me, Inkatha Freedom Party, UDM, PAC, pull them behind closed doors and say, guys, you are not each other's enemy. You don't have to badmouth each other. You don't have to kill each other. You don't have to fight over voters. Let's collaborate. Let's collaborate. Let's all go on the ground and change the tune, Guys, solidarity. Right now, we will have that outright majority. We can change a constitution even now. But because of this white capital, it has divided us into factions. Now, people are prepared to kill each other for that, and badmouth each other for that. And that really is a sad culture. You can't have your own comrades. It was the same thing with Nkwame, deceived by his own comrades. Same thing with Gaddafi, same thing with Patrice Lumumba. So there's always house niggers deployed amongst us to disrupt us, to betray us. And I think we need to be careful of that. We need solidarity, and we need to organize and literally take messages to the ground. So if you are able to assist us, we want coverage of all the nations. So if you know friends, families, please inbox me. Tell me the nation that you represent, that you can help us champion. But within those nations that you are championing, we want to consolidate all these Pan-African organizations that live on WhatsApp groups. All of them, whatever they are, religious institutions, churches, it doesn't matter now what religion, because we are African first before you are a Christian or Muslim or African spirituality. You are first an African. Then you are first an African before you are a political party. You work any gear of a political party. You are an African first. So Africa must come first before your funders. That's the narrative. We want everybody, child, mothers, women, men. We do not discriminate, nothing. We want solidarity now. And the message is this: it's not stomach politics. You are not coming here so that you get jobs. You're not coming here so that you have food. You're not coming here for that. You are coming here so that you take ownership of your own land and economy, and you participate in solutions. You're the one who must stop doing crime, so that the police minister has a break, so that our jails are empty, so that we save the budget that we do in correctional services. You are the one who must raise your own sons and daughters, so that the government doesn't have to do grants for child grants. So if fathers come and let's go, it's not about a job. We don't have to look for jobs. We have to go and cultivate the land and produce products and services. That's what we have to do. Don't sit on the side of the road the whole day looking for someone to pick you up. No, let's go back home and cultivate the ground and raise livestock. Let's start there. Now, the collaboration that we need to do, let me also send a message to the house niggers, you know, the elite, those who are now house niggers. They have arrived now. You see, they dine with the white capital, so they think these other niggers are lazy. But actually, on the contrary, there's other niggers, the ones that are working the hardest. They're the ones who are working the hardest in keeping the economy going. Now that you are a house nigger, you think you've arrived. I want to remind you where you come from. You come from that village. You come from that township. Now remember who you are. Remember your sons and your daughters, your siblings, your cousins. Go back there. And now the reason you are successful, the reason you have learned everything you've learned, is not so that you gloat over yourself, but it's for you to be successful so that with one of you, you can bring hundreds where you are. You have that lever now, the knowledge, the expertise, the buying power, and the capital, you know. Now come, participate, finance this vision, build the businesses, train, pass knowledge to the young people. So instead of carrying on being a blue-eyed boy for white capital, instead of sitting and living in Europe forever, come back, spend some of your knowledge here, and some of your money here, and some of your expertise here. Rebuild Africa, you know, instead of being absconded, instead of absconding and, you know, forgetting and dying there in Europe. You are not a European. You will never be a European. You are an African. So just remember who you are. So that is an appeal to all the diaspora, because a lot of diaspora now dance to the tune of the pollution media propaganda that Africa, let's not, you know, put our money there anymore. Let's all go to Malta. Let's go to Australia, all of us. Let's go to Europe, all of us. No, you are kings and queens here on this continent. We are calling on you now. You need to step up and come and join this mandate. So thank you so much, kings and queens. Yes, we normally end at past. So thank you so much for your patience. Let's keep this message going. Let's take it to the end of the earth. Let's take it to the ends of the earth. Thank you so much, King Coffee. I wrap it up there.